Thank you for joining us today, and in this video we are going to talk about properties of limit. And under the properties of limit, we are going to talk about constant and constant multiple rule. Let's jump right in. So let's assume that we have a limit as s is approaching a of f of s, which is equal to L, and then G which is equal to m, where L and m are constant and c is also a constant, right? Now we want to look at limit of a constant if you want to find a limit of a constant, and we are also going to talk about constant multiple rule. So now let's start with limit of a constant. So limit of a constant, right? So now let's assume I have limit as s is approaching a of c. Now remember, we said from the question c is a constant, right? So if c is a constant, then what is the limit of a constant? That is what we are trying to say here. A limit of a constant is the same as a constant. Very simple. A limit of a constant is the same as what? The constant. Why? Because now we can see that this c here does not depend on what? X. So it means that no matter the value that x is going to approach, let's assume that a can be 1, a can be 2, a can be 3, no matter the value of what? A, still c is not going to change because it does not depend on what? X. So that's the idea. So now let me sketch this. Limit as s is approaching 2 of 4 is still 4 from the limit of a constant property. So let's assume that I have this one. So 4 should be here, which is here, right? And x is equal to 2 is also here. And we can see that this is equal to 4. Now let me change the value of x from 2 to 3. You will see that if here is equal to 3, still I'm going to have it to be 4. Nothing is changing. It's still 4. If I pick something like -1, I move, still I'm getting 4. So that is the idea of when we are talking about a limit of a constant. No matter the value of a right here, still we are going to get the constant. Why? Because the value does not depend on x. So when x changes, 4 does not change. So that is the idea. Now let's look at the next one, which is constant multiple rule. So now we know that so now we know the idea of a limit of a constant. Now when we are talking about constant multiple rule, this is what we are trying to say. We want to find limit as s is approaching a of a constant, which is c, and f of x, a function which depends on x, right? And this is how we are going to write it. Now we saw that when it is a constant, it does not depend on the limit. So what we can do is we can bring this one behind the limit, which is going to give us c limit x is approaching a of f of x. So the idea is that this c here does not depend on as x is approaching a. So we can just bring it behind, right? And just pick the limit of f of x, because this f of x here depend on x. You know, this is x and this is x here. So the value of a will determine what we are going to get for this limit here, right? Now we assume that limit as x is approaching a of f of s is equal to L. So it means that this is going to give us c times L. So that is the idea of constant multiple rule. So if we have a constant multiplying a function f of x, then what we just need to do is we factor the constant out, then we just pick limit of the function which depends on x. Practical example. Let's assume that we have limit x is approaching 1, right? And we have, let's say, 2, right? And we have x. This is going to give us 2 limit x is approaching 1 of x, because this depends on this because the function here is in terms of x. This 2 here does not depend on x, so we can factor it out, and this is how we are going to do it. So this is how we are going to go with the function. Or let's assume that this is not x and this is f of x, right? Then this will be f of x, right? And we are going to have this right here. So we just factor the constant out and just work with it. So let's assume I have limit as x is approaching 1 of f of x to be equal to, let's say, 3. Then from this one we can write this one as this one here as 2 times 3, which is going to give us 6. So now this is 3, which is from here, and then this is going to give us 6 right here. So this is the idea of a limit of a constant and a constant multiple rule. Don't forget, a limit of a constant is the constant, and when we are using the constant multiple rule, the idea is that if we have a constant multiplying the function, just factor the constant out and rewrite the function like this. Very simple.